Welcome to the AICPA Town Hall Series, your resource for the latest news and updates on pressing issues facing the accounting profession.
Good afternoon and welcome to the AICPA Town Hall Series. I'm Eric Auskerson, one of your hosts for today. We've got another great program in store for you. We're going to kick things off with the DC and profession update. We'll review the midterm elections and, more importantly, talk about what this means for the remainder of the year. We then are going to have a technical update from Lisa Simpson, talk about some recent PPP updates from the SBA, and also talk a little bit about the IRS. We're then going to have a tax task force discussion, and this is going to be led by April Walker, and we're going to talk about reimagining your tax practice, and there's a number of different activities underway with this task force that are going to help you do that. We then are going to have a future of finance discussion led by Tom Hood, talk about some of the top issues that CFOs are facing, and Tom's going to talk about some insights that this community is developing. And then we'll finally end with our open forum and closing remarks. We welcome your questions and engagement throughout today's show. We've got a lot of presenters, and as usual, we'll introduce them as they join the program. So 2 slides here of presenters. And kicking things off with me will be Lauren Pfingstag, who you all know is a director in the advocacy team at the AICPA. So welcome, Lauren.
Thank you, Eric. Glad to be here.
Great to have you. So there's a lot going on in DC. One announcement that I'll cover quickly. The IRS did announce the nomination, or the Biden did announce the nomination of a new IRS commissioner, Danny Warfel. He's someone who is very familiar with Washington, D.C. He was a previous acting commissioner of the IRS in 2013. He also supported Obama in some other federal fiscal roles. The appointment process, Lauren, is going to be conducted during the month of December by the Senate. So this is something that we will be staying connected to and bringing you further updates on. Anything else you'd like to add to that, Lauren?
Yeah, I think when his name was announced, everyone was asking if this was a football star. There was a college football player, and then the second question is what's the timing? So Danny has to go through the time-honored tradition of meeting every senator, talking to every member in that chamber, trying to secure the votes for his nomination. But the fact that he was nominated now means that the Biden administration is probably feeling confident that he will be confirmed sometime in December of 2022.
So we'll keep you updated on that during the December town hall meetings. So Lauren, the midterm elections have occurred. We did talk a lot about this over the previous town halls. One thing we discussed was this potential of a red wave. So maybe you just want to kind of give us a little bit of history on that, and then we can talk about what happened, and then more importantly, what it means.
Absolutely. So there are still races where votes are being counted, right? Like, this isn't technically over, which is always interesting, but it's clear that we are entering an era of divided government. We're not surprised by the outcome in the Senate. It was always going to be close, and a 50 or 51 seat majority, depending on the Georgia race, that's close. But we were surprised by the House outcome. Right now, Republicans control something like 218 seats. I think Democrats have about 210 seats. Like I said, there are still a few races that have to be closed out. And that's almost an exact mirror of the thin majority that Democrats had in 2020 in the House. But I think everyone was predicting a so-called red wave, right? That was when the Republicans could have picked up maybe upwards of 30 seats in the House. And that didn't materialize, but there were a lot of factors that led everyone to believe that there was going to be that big pickup. An important factor was you had pollsters, pundits, and even members of the Democratic Party talking about this red wave. James Clyburn, who's the 3rd highest ranking Democratic member in the House, he went on national TV on election night to talk about how the Democratic Party needs to do a better job messaging and strategizing ahead of the next election. So there was this widespread feeling from pollsters, political pundits, the Democratic Party, that they weren't doing a good job messaging. The Democratic Party wasn't doing a good job messaging on their accomplishments, and that voters were more concerned with things like inflation and crime, and they were going to express that concern at the ballot box. And at the same time that I think you had the Democratic Party a little bit nervous about the outcome, you had a lot of overconfidence in the Republican Party. They were spending an enormous amount of money, not just in those toss-up seats, and we've talked about this, but in seats where the Democratic Party has always been strong. They've always had a member. And in some areas of the country, Florida and New York, that overconfidence was well-founded. The Republicans did very well in those areas. But then we always go back to, well, what does history tell us? And we have those two important data points. The president's party almost always loses seats in the midterms. And if the president's approval rating is below 50%, he or she loses on average 36 seats across both chambers. So it's not, we were looking at maybe 30 to 40 seats in the House being lost to Republicans. And the fact that it's so thin is quite surprising.
Well, this is why we have elections, and I think the American people have spoken. So what do you make from these elections before we get into, what it'll mean for the month of December?
Yeah. I think each party is going to have to do their own exhaustive autopsy on what happened, what went right, what went wrong. But I think we can make some early observations. Three things probably broke in favor of Democratic candidates in this election cycle. Exit polls, those are the surveys based on interviews with voters as they leave the voting booth. That tells a story about the Dobbs Supreme Court decision and how voters felt about that decision and that decision's impact on reproductive rights. So 27% of voters said that abortion was the single most important issue in determining their vote, and right behind inflation at 31%. Another observation is that it appears as if 2020 election day denialism was an important factor for voters when they considered who to vote for. Now, the majority of candidates who dispute the legitimacy of the 2020 election, they actually did win their race. What's important is that the bulk of those wins came from incumbent Republicans, so members who are already known to their constituencies. For the political newcomers who took that position, close to 70% of them lost their races. And I think the third observation we can make, and members of the Republican Party are making it for us, I think Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said it best, was candidate quality has a lot to do with the outcome. So some of the newer Republican candidates had really low favorability ratings, and the result was ticket splitting, where you saw voters in battleground races and battleground states support a Democrat in one race, perhaps in the Senate, and a Republican in another, say the gubernatorial race. But exceptionally close races are a feature of modern politics. So if a candidate is underperforming by just a few percentage points, that can cost them the election. And that appears to have happened in a number of races.
Well, let's get into, what does this mean for this lame duck? So we're going to have the lame duck session of Congress, the 117th session of Congress will stay there until the new elected group is sworn in January. So what do you think December is going to look like?
Yeah, I know we've seen this slide on the town hall before. We pull it up again because we're trying to show you the scope, the enormity of things that could be accomplished in December. Not all of this is going to happen. There are a few things that are becoming high priorities for members of both parties, but this is shaping up to be a really active December. And quite frankly, I think this environment where you have a razor thin Republican majority coming into the House and you have Democratic control in the Senate continuing, this is probably the best environment to create urgency around a year-end deal. There is this sense that we have to clear the decks before we enter perhaps in a time of legislative gridlock. So 2 weeks ago, congressional staffers were not talking. I wasn't hearing from them. And now my email inbox is flooded with emails from congressional aides
Mhm.
asking about our technical expertise and what our input should be on, notably, a retirement package, tax extenders, things like that. So for CPAs, for our audience members who are doing tax planning for clients, I'd say that retirement bill is at the top of the list for activity in December. We're going to see probably appropriations legislation. I could see tax extenders moving. The LIFO relief for auto dealers is high on the list. It has almost 60 co-sponsors on a bill in the Senate. But it's going to be, I think, a really active December.
Well, that's interesting to hear. I mean, there's going to be a lot of negotiations. Everyone's saying, okay, this is, if I want to get anything done, I should compromise now before this next kind of divided Congress takes hold.
Absolutely. And it's not that things can't be accomplished in divided government. You can have a lot of legislative activity, but there's a bar that has to be cleared. And that bar is that things need to be bipartisan and bicameral, consensus driven. And luckily, we have a lot of initiatives that fall into that space because that's the kind of shop that we are. But I think there's this, like I said, a sense that we have to clear the decks now before we enter uncertain environments of divided government next year.
Well, do you want to talk a little bit more about just what you think the 118th Congress will be like, and what is the likelihood of activity in the first quarter of 2023?
Yeah, first quarter of 2023. If the Congress doesn't deal with the debt ceiling in the lame duck, which I don't think they're going to, that's going to be an important topic of conversation in the first quarter of 2023. I don't think we're going to see action until mid 2023, maybe even late 2023, but expect that to define a lot of the early conversations in the 118th. But the dynamic I think that we are keeping an eye on is it's not just an era of divided government next year. It is a time when you have thin margins of control in both chambers. So, and when you have a larger margin of control in the House or the Senate, you can allow, a colleague or two to kind of buck the party without threatening outcomes. But when both chambers have to get everything done with the votes of one party, it's really hard to govern, especially when there are divides within the party. And we saw that, right, in the Senate over the last 2 years, where moderate Democratic senators like Senator Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, they held outsized sway over the scope and content of major bills. So it's going to be an interesting couple of years. And I think the takeaway is, with thin majorities, anyone can be the Joe Manchin of the House or the Senate, right? And then vacancies, which are routine, meaning members who pass away, members who retire, those can create problems because that can shift the power, the power in either chamber pretty quickly.
Well, more to come on that as we enter into December with our town halls, but let's now just quickly touch on another topic that is basically being covered daily in all of the business press and broader press, and this is the bankruptcy declared by FTX about a week ago. What you're seeing here is a picture of their former CEO, Sam Bankman-Fried, who we're all hearing a lot about. And this is something that we are going to talk about more in December with Barry Melanson and Ron Quantra. But this is something that I know, Lauren, right now, there's already a lot of discussions going on with the regulators and members of Congress on what happened.
Yeah, I'm glad you're bringing Ron on, because I am not a crypto expert. And I think people are still wrapping their heads around what exactly happened, and unpacking the why is going to take time. I think we can safely say that this probably isn't a collapse that risks, contagion in the broader marketplace. Does it have implications for crypto? Absolutely. It's an important topic in DC because it means members of Congress who weren't aware of this industry before are aware of it now. The former CEO was a really highly respected voice in DC in terms of cryptocurrency or emerging cryptocurrency policy and regulation. And 2 weeks ago, this was the second largest crypto exchange in the world. And in a matter of days, it all seemed to kind of fall apart. It looked like it experienced a classic bank run. But what I want to impress upon the town hall audience is members of Congress are now very much awake to investor protection and investor loss issues. There are going to be debates over whether regulation is required and what regulation should look like. While we were on the town hall, Eric, I think Senator Warren just released a letter to FTX asking for detailed information on their operations. There should be hearings, I think, in December in both the House and the Senate. So it's going to become, I think, a bipartisan topic of interest next year.
Yes, I mean, this is something that we will absolutely be talking in greater detail. We've got questions coming in. I think right now, as the appointed CEO, as part of the bankruptcy process, is already making statements that there was a lot of breakdowns at the company. No surprise there. So look forward to digging a little bit deeper into what happened. Without a doubt, this is going to put a spotlight on the digital assets, crypto space. A lot of the players there and participants have been asking for regulation. The more regulation will be coming. So there'll be probably a lot of positive outcomes of this, and there's also going to be a lot of review on what happened and how it happened. So more to come on that in December. So Lisa Simpson, we're going to have Lisa join us now. Lisa, any comments on just what Laura and I have talked about? And I know we've got a number of resources here related to blockchain and digital assets.
Thank you, Eric, and good to see everyone. If you remember back on September 22nd, I had Di Krupika from our digital assets team come on to talk with me about some of the accounting and auditing issues around digital assets, some of the projects that we have going on. But we wanted to make sure that you had this slide as a reminder that if you've got clients that are in this space, you want to know what's going on and what the policies are around accounting and auditing. It's loose right now. That's why we've developed these practice aids and for accounting and auditing. We have more projects in the pipeline that'll be coming out soon. But again, if you've got clients that are in this space, please make sure that you're up to speed on what some of these resources are talking about. So that's why we wanted to pop this back up for your reference. And again, had a discussion on September 22nd if you want to go check that town hall replay again.
And we didn't even have a chance to thank Lauren. A lot of nice comments coming in about Lauren's update. So thanks, Lauren, for that. And Lisa, I will let you now take us into the technical update section. One thing I do want to highlight is that Lisa is coming to us live from the Durham studio. So good to have you in the Durham studio. I know you're going to have a guest join you shortly.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, I'm going to do a quick technical update, and we're going to jump into the Wayback Machine. We're going to go talking about PPP. It's been a while, but there was some new information that came out from the SBA through the lender portal that you and I don't have access to unless we're connected with a lender somehow. And it talks about the actual process for something they announced a year or so ago. So again, let's hop into the Wayback Machine. If you remember, if a PPP borrower did not file for forgiveness, they had until the maturity date of their loan to actually do that forgiveness filing. In the meantime, they had to start making payments 10 months after the end of the covered period. And what happened in some cases is the borrower just ignored a lender's request to start making payments. They didn't submit a forgiveness application or something to that effect. The lender said, okay, I'm not getting anywhere. I'm going to go back to the SBA and have the SBA purchase that PPP loan that I made as the lender, because all of these SBA loans were guaranteed. So now what's happening is borrowers are coming back and saying, hey, wait a minute. I did mean to apply for forgiveness. I just didn't get around to it. So I want to apply because I'm eligible for some forgiveness. And the SBA said, okay, we're going to have to figure out how to make this happen. So they've announced that, and theoretically, beginning earlier this week on Monday, they had a process instituted through their loan portal that they communicate to the lenders with. And all of this ties back to a procedural notice that outlined what the lenders were supposed to do if they were asking the SBA to guarantee a loan. So on the next slide, I've given you some details about what the process looks like. If you've got a client who is in that situation, then they're going to want to know that the clock is ticking. They need to start moving on this by making a request to the lender through a forgiveness application. What happens next depends on whether or not the lender has already submitted to the SBA for loan guarantee. And as you can see, if it's been submitted but not actually effectuated, then the lender just needs to go in and immediately withdraw that guarantee purchase request. Some question might come up and say the SBA doesn't forgive the loan in full, then the lenders would go back and submit for guarantee again. So a little bit of process that would have to go through there. But let's say that the SBA has purchased the guarantee, so the lender's been paid in full, and now the borrower is applying for forgiveness, and the borrower gets forgiveness, then the SBA will actually not give the money back to the lender because the lender's already been paid. They're going to reduce the amount that the borrower owes to the U.S. Treasury. And again, in our Wayback Machine, the SBA had announced that any guarantees that they had executed over $100,000 would be turned over to Treasury, and then Treasury could keep track on those and try to recover those funds in some form or fashion. So I know of a particular instance where a CFO for an organization just completely ignored the lender's request to make payments or file, and it was a $1 million plus loan that went to the SBA. SBA purchased the guarantee, turned them into Treasury, so now there is actually an opportunity for that borrower to go through the process to have that forgiven. A little confusing, but if you do have clients in that circumstance, it's going to be important. So that's the PPP update, but then just really quickly, this was my excuse to get a cute little furry animal on a slide. Been trying for a couple of years, so we finally got one, but it's not in the best context. It's a groundhog. Last week, Erin Collins, our national taxpayer advocate, released a blog basically saying she's concerned that the backlog of tax returns at the IRS is not getting to the level that it needs to be by the end of 2022 as we go into the next filing season. She indicated that there were about 8 million individual and business paper returns, which is $1 million more than at the same point in the prior year. The IRS has said that they've processed all of the individual returns that they had received through April. But we all know that throughout the course of the summer and as we approached the October 15 filing deadline, that more returns came in. So they're still dealing with that paper backlog, and Erin Collins is just raising that as a point of concern. If you remember back in March, Commissioner Reddick had said that they would work really hard to get those levels back down to healthy and normal. We're continuing to advocate with the IRS for ways to reduce backlog, really focus some of the money that they've gotten through new funding on customer service and effective use of technology. So just wanted to give you a heads up, and it's also a perfect transition to our next topic, which is April Walker's report and interview with a couple of key volunteer practitioners talking about the work of a new task force that they've done. The task force is called the Tax Practice Resiliency Task Force, and she's going to introduce us to two great volunteers and then tell us a little bit more about the work that they've been doing. Thank you, April, for joining me, and it's good to be in the studio with you.
Yes, it is. It is good to be together, and also thank you for having me on the town hall. You have likely heard this task force talked about, but you might not have heard the name of it. The name of it is the Tax Practice Resiliency Task Force. It's a little bit of a mouthful, as Lisa said, and it is 8 members strong. When it was put together, the plan was to put together a mix of practitioners from different size firms, different ages, and just to get some diversity of thought. And I'm delighted to have with me here today Damian Martin, who is a partner with Forvis in Chicago, and also Nicole Davis. She is a owner of Butler Davis Tax and Accounting. She is in Georgia. So thank you for joining me today. Just a little bit of background on the task force itself. When you heard about it, you probably heard that we were talking about the due dates, the tax return filing due dates. So that is definitely a hot topic and a hotly contested topic among our members. And, you know, some people very strongly on one side, strongly on the other side. But we wanted to take a look at it and, you know, really do some research and dig into that. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Also talking about the pain points and the struggles that tax practitioners are having in this environment right now. You know, unrealistic client expectations, struggles with the IRS, compressed work deadlines, all of that. So our goal on this task force is really to talk and educate ourselves about these issues, but also to actually do some action, to actually do some real work to make things better. That's really our goal. So I'm going to start off with you, Damian. Can you talk a little bit more about some of those pain points that you've experienced in your practice, and also why you agreed to say yes to the task force?
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me here today. And I guess I'll just probably open it by saying, you know, I know from talking to you, from talking to Nicole, I myself, and I bet everyone that's watching right now and listening, right, we can all relate that the last 3 years have just been this period of, I guess I'll just call it incredible stress. You know, there's just been kind of this perfect storm, to use Barry's term earlier on the town hall sessions, you know, of I don't know, you've all heard the list. We all know the list, right? And I guess really what it became very evident to me, and you know, when you ask why did I decide to join the task force when the opportunity came up, you know, I know personally how it's impacted me, and I mean, you can just kind of feel it with the backlog that we just talked about. You know, this kind of constant change, almost feeling like you're on a treadmill of change and trying to get the guidance. And at the end of the day, we're just trying to help and answer questions for our clients and our colleagues. And, you know, we don't know the answers, but we're trying. So just feeling like you're constantly going, kind of never ending, you know, busy time, so to speak. But then what really became clear to me is, you know, as I talked to those on my team that are, you know, newer to the profession, maybe they came in during this window of time. I have a bit of perspective, I guess, which is kind of in a way funny for me to say that, right? I have some perspective on things. I've experienced more than just the last 3 years in the profession. Know what that's like, and kind of, while it's, you know, it's a lot, you know, I can put in some perspective. Well, those coming into the profession don't have that, don't see that necessarily, unless we're talking about it. And that's why I think talking about it's so important. But secondarily, like, that's going to, you know, maybe dissuade some people from staying in, or maybe even coming into the profession from my perspective. So what really, when I think about it, gets me out of bed every morning is trying to just pave the way for the future of the profession, you know, doing what I can to make the profession a better place, you know, and make those that I work with, you know, better, you know, kind of rising tide rises all ships sort of thing, right? So when I started hearing that from those, in the words burnout, from those that are maybe 3 years in the profession, that was sort of a, wow, you know, this is really going deeper than I think. And hey, if I want to help to pave the future of the profession, you know, we really need to look at some of the things that we can maybe do to start to make the profession more resilient and you know, something that's more attractive to those coming into the profession. So a long way to say that, you know, I myself have felt it. I know you have. Everybody's felt it, but it really comes home to roost when you think about the future of the profession.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And Nicole, I'd like for you to talk about, you know, due dates definitely was a hot topic for this group. And so I'd like you to share kind of what your perspective was coming into the group on due dates. So, and also just not every single member, but kind of what was the overall feeling of the group?
Okay. So thank you for having me. So for me, I would say I was very much in support of changing the tax deadlines, the tax filing deadlines, and changing them right now, right? But as mentioned, the membership is very divided on the issue. I mean, the actual split depends on the demographics of who you're asking and the timing of the ask. So even among our 8-person task force, we have varying opinions on if the due date needs to be changed. And if a change will create any kind of meaningful help that will help kind of ease the burden of strains on the tax profession.
Yeah, that's helpful, hopefully for people to be able to hear that we did not stack the task force with people who were just, in opposition of changing the due date. Damien, can you talk through just a few of the steps in education that we went about in trying to, see what was possible as far as the due date goes?
Absolutely. And that's been part of the really enjoyable process of being on the task force, I'll say. And maybe it's taken a play from, I guess it's habit 5 from Stephen R. Covey's, 7 habits, seek first to understand and then be understood. And so we've really talked to a lot of different stakeholders. And I think that's what was really eye-opening to me, is just perhaps thinking about it for a minute of just how many different perspectives there are other than mine and my colleagues, right? So we talked to a number of the practitioner organizations and stakeholders, to former IRS staffers, to current staffers on the Hill, and just getting a wide range of perspectives in terms of what's possible and really, what would move the needle respective to the deadline issue.
Gotcha. And can you share, we did come to a conclusion or consensus on the group. What you want to share what that was?
I'd be happy to. Nicole, I don't know. Would you like the honors? I guess I'll say that the consensus really was that despite, again, Nicole, I know you're like you said, your personal opinions, really just seeing where you're going to focus the effort. It's going to be around not focusing the effort on moving the deadlines, because that becomes very, very difficult of a lift to do.
Right. So I'm usually in the background on these town halls. I'm in the questions. So I can't see the questions right now, but if I could see the questions, I feel like there's a lot of questions like, what did you say? So can you talk to Nicole, can you kind of explain a little bit more about why we're saying, hey, it's not time, we are not recommending a change in the due date right now, and why, more importantly?
Yes, so what Damien and April are saying is that as of now, the due date change is not possible in the short or near term. So why is that? Even if everything was aligned, I mean, the vast majority of the membership supported it. We had this other stakeholders that supported it. If we had congressional support and they actually passed the law to change the due date permanently, and then we also had the IRS actually have a desire and ability to implement this change, that even if all of that was aligned, which it is not, it would take a very long time. We're looking at 5 to 7 years for it to be effective. So we know that that's not the solution you may have wanted to hear. So we're looking at, okay, what are we struggling with right now, and what solutions can we provide right now to kind of deal with our current problems? Now, we're not saying it's not a solution later on that we can tackle, but for short term, we're trying to look at viable solutions to help the profession.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about some of those resources that we're going to have available in just a few minutes. But Damien, before we do that, we did identify a few legislative fix or possible things that would help practitioners in that way. You want to share some of those with us?
Absolutely, yeah, because I think there's, as we look at the issue, it's just more complicated than just the deadline. I think we realize, and there's a lot of contributing factors and maybe levers, I guess, that are involved here, right? So some of the things that we had talked about were like streamlining the process of extensions. I know as we look at that, and even in my practice, I mean, there's just a lot of time and effort that goes into that. Is there a way that there can be changes that would be made around that, and maybe more like the FBAR extension and the changes that we've seen there, right? That's really tremendously helped in terms of the compliance side of things, right? And maybe not changed things so dramatically in the big picture. I think 1099 filing deadlines are also something that we could look at a fixed perspective and can help ease the burden, certainly with, giving more time to work with, I guess, right? So just really try to compression, not add to it per se, with the timing of that coming up and bumping up against filing deadlines. And then, and I know this is something that the AICPA has advocated for and is working towards around just having it a more effective and functional, I guess, IRS, right? And in terms of technology and whatnot. And I think that would really go a long way. I mean, just in terms of the dealing with notices and the interaction with the IRS and maybe cutting down on some of those notices, or having a portal, that tax practitioners can access to be able to provide and receive information to the IRS. Those are the kind of things that we're talking about that, again, Nicole, to use your term there, right? Short-term, midterm type things that can help to move the needle, maybe a couple levers that are more attainable than going for the big, the deadline itself.
Correct.
And
so
we
some
really-
of the
go ahead, Nicole.
So some of the next steps we're taking within the task force is that, like April said, she did a great job of pulling together people from various size firms, from various backgrounds. So one of the ways we're tackling that is that we've developed a series of Zoom sessions where we're calling Reimagining Your Tax Practice. And it's pretty much, we're going to discuss topics around client expectations, billing, technology, staffing, and what an ideal tax season looks like. So those are free. There's no fee to register, and we're recording them so you can actually view them later.
Yes, and 2 of them have already occurred. We're going to send the links to those in the town hall newsletter, so you can go back and listen to those about setting client expectations. There was some good talk on there about setting boundaries and extensions and that sort of thing. There's good talk there. And then we had one earlier this week about technology, which I learned some things. So I think it was a good one. And so you can go ahead and register for these upcoming ones. We really hope that this is going to provide a community in a way that you can get some new ideas, because even though we've identified some ways that administration of filing tax returns might be better, we know that those are not going to happen for tax season 2023. Like, let's be reasonable and know. Let's see, Damien, do you have any takeaways that you've got from either of these sessions?
Yeah, I think, I've been involved on the panels of the last 2, right? And I will say I walked away with pages of notes and takeaways on my end. And I think, like you mentioned, the boundaries thing, that's something I've been focusing on. But even you'll have to go check out the session. So I'll leave the cliffhanger here of find out about Nicole's pizza tracker that she has for managing and working with clients and expectations around deliverables. So I'll just leave it at that. You got to go watch it to find out. But the takeaways have just really been great. And like you said, a sense of community that it's been creating, and it just creates, even being on the panel. It's been awesome. It's been great.
Mm-hmm. And we have also included some other resources that we have put together as part of the group. We wanted to be able to communicate here on the town hall, so hopefully you can get a piece of it. But on the Tax Section Odyssey podcast episode that dropped today, actually, we do a deeper dive. There's 3 other members of the task force who talk about some of these topics and kind of give their perspective. So take a listen there. There's also going to be an upcoming blog post that's going to, again, give another perspective on this issue. And one thing I'm really excited about is each of the task force members are going to kind of covenant to take 1 or 2 things that they're going to implement into their practice for the next tax season, and then we'll be able to follow up and see how that goes. So I'm so appreciative of Damien and Nicole joining me today. Reimagining a tax practice is vital to the future of this profession. So thanks so much for joining us.
Well, April, thank you and the task force members here for this activity. I can tell you, you're right. You're not behind the scenes answering questions. We're at 100 questions on IRS and tax, most of them related to this session. And what I can say is we always leverage these questions for our next town hall. I think we'll take some of these questions and probably comment a little bit further on some of the things that were just discussed. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So with that, I'd like to bring my good friend Tom Hood up. Tom, it's great to see you. You all know Tom. Tom is one of the executives at the AICPA. He's an EVP in charge of business growth and engagement, and he's really leading this very, very significant effort related to the future of finance. And one thing I just want to say to the town hall community is about 25% of our attendees, Tom, are from business and industry. So we've got a lot of people that will be very interested in this topic.
Yeah, and it's an honor to be here. And I'm with Nancy Furr, who is the CFO of Ted's Montana Grill. Nancy, say hi to our town hall audience.
Hi, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
And let's bring up our future finance group slide. So it is an honor to be here. And for those of you, it was great to hear that tax thing about reimagining tax. We're doing the same thing for the business industry, government, nonprofit CPAs and CGMAs out there by talking about the future of finance. And this is a group that we put together about 1.5 years ago, and they've met around 13 times, including a big summit last December. And we're preparing for one more summit this December, where we're really standing on their shoulders to try to reimagine what finance and accounting will look like. And we take that work and we've been exposing it to the AICPA Council, to state CPA societies, and all over the place. And Nancy's been part of that group. And interesting enough, Nancy, tell a little bit of background about what you do at Ted's Montana Grill and about your experience on this group.
Sure. Yeah, I work for Ted's Montana Grill. We are an upscale casual dining restaurant. We have 39 units and founded by Ted Turner and George McCara, who founded Longhorns. So I was really excited to join the group, but being from a smaller organization at first, I wondered how I would fit in with a lot of these larger organizations that you see on the screen. And what I really have come to discover is we all have very similar issues and goals. I think for the mid-sized businesses where I fall, it's almost more critical or as critical as the larger organizations because we don't have a lot of resources. I was recently on a panel and I have an accounting staff of 10. And I think the CFO from Caterpillar had how many thousand, like
2,500 or 3,000?
Yeah, 25. Yeah. So it was quite a difference. But what I have really gotten out of participating in this group is how critical it is for smaller organizations to think about what the future of their finance group needs to look like, because you don't have a lot of resources. You don't have a lot of people, and obviously time is our biggest resource. So I have to figure out how to get us there a lot more methodically than, without a lot of help. So.
Yeah. So, and let's go to the next slide because that what Nancy's talking about is the trends, in fact, are very similar. I want to point out there's a three-way tie for second. So there's really 5 trends, but 3 of them are number 2. And in the bottom right, you can see how some of those trends have changed. But talent continues to be the absolute number 1 issue. But then I want to go to the third one up there, the green bar, which is the need for new skills. And then 2 below that is the accelerated digital transformation. So those in the top 3 have been consistent for about 1.5 years now. And I think they're driving just about everything. The pandemic made you have to do a whole lot more future-looking things and projections. That created the need for more digital transfer. What do you think about these? How are they impacting you at Ted's Montana Grill, Nancy?
They're so important. And, the pandemic was very detrimental to our industry. And we had to really look at ways for our small team to adapt, to provide operations with better reporting. And it couldn't just be traditional budgets that we all know and have used for years. We had to look at ways to create optimal targets, work with operations to come up with ways to set goals for them that were very different than what we had done in our past. And so that, I was very blessed that the team embraced that, and we were able to make changes in order to change financial reporting very quickly and provide what operations really needed to survive and succeed through the pandemic, which I'm grateful to say that we were able to do.
And you had to do PPP, I guess, and all those kind of things as well?
Yeah, we did everything. We did everything there was to do. We were very scrappy.
being in the restaurant business, right? What did you say you had? Was it how many months where you had like no revenues or something like that?
We had 6 weeks with no revenue. So I told somebody once that financial reporting is not necessarily, nobody's sitting on pins and needles waiting for it when you have zero as your top line. So a couple of months there, people just didn't want to read them at all.
I bet. And then didn't you do something pretty, let's go to that next slide, because I think it picks up on what we're talking about here, which is obviously the risks, the trends, all those pieces have shifted the role of the CFO. And we call it even the chief future officer. Talk about, how's your role changed and how?
Yeah, I think there's actually a slide where we call, we say we need to transform from CFNO NO to CFKNOW. And I think that's so important to be at the table and driving the strategy for the business. And in order to do that, we have to get to this futuristic model for the finance department so that I can not only be a gatekeeper, which is obviously part of my job as CFNO, but to be a part of all of the different facets of the business and know what's going on in every department, what's going on in operations, so you can provide really strategic advice at the senior leadership level.
And then just like the tax group was talking about, the need for transformation of your fund, you're getting ready to do a big automation, but talk about what you're seeing in terms of where you are and having to transform your financials and your reporting systems and everything right now, and how that's impacting your role as a CFO.
Yeah, it's really challenging for a small organization. It's hard to find the right fit for systems. We've had some really big systems, and for a small company, they're hard to maintain. And then, we have very, basic systems. So we're in the process of upgrading our ERP and upgrading our reporting, which I'm very grateful for. I'm highly involved in the analytics of the business. And so I told Tom 2 days ago I was going to die cutting and pasting if I didn't get this implemented in the next few months. But it's a fine line to find the right system that's easy to use, easy to maintain, that can automate a lot of processes in your department so that your staff can really focus on really value added reporting. And that's an undertaking that we're currently going through. And, it does have its challenges, but I'm looking forward to the end result and being able to provide a lot more detailed and customized reports for the business.
Well, and you and I were talking about, I'm a former CFO, and I remember for years, right, you're having just to get the data right.
Yes.
Before you could analyze it, it used to take us all of our time. And I think we're on the brink where systems are beginning to do that. But you even said, even now, you're pulling data from all these like sales systems, point of sale, the GL, all those things, and you still have to pull it in and make sure it's right, and then get it before you can even begin to do anything with it. So we're hoping that in this next phase, that will become a whole lot better and easier for us, right?
Yeah, it needs to, because you spend a lot of time mining data and making sure it's right before you can even present it. So having it all in one place is kind of the goal here at Tez Montana Grill, so that we can stop cutting and pasting and mining data and do more valuable things with our time. So,
all right, let's go to our final slide as we kind of wrap up. This was out of our summit last year. This was the big 5 themes, and this idea of a terrified dinosaur. I think the finance group said, we've got to evolve or we're going to be irrelevant, because automation and other things will start to provide data that people need without having us being able to, if all we're doing is moving numbers around, that's not value add. So we've got to get to that next thing, which is that shift of value partner. And I think, Nancy, you just talked about your role trying to do that. We already mentioned the upskilling and reskilling. The core versus the edge is the idea that in many core businesses, you can't account for innovative businesses the same way you do for the core. Do you have any of that, like innovation projects going on at TEDS that you have to be thinking about differently with the numbers and how they're working?
Yeah, we actually challenge ourselves to be change agents and innovators in every department. And so we're constantly doing that across, across all the business departments to figure out how to do more with less and how to innovate that so that it makes, it's more streamlined and doesn't burden the company with either more headcount or more expense, which is the challenge.
Yep. It's how to do that. So I think in closing, there's this urgency about moving forward faster, even in this new role. And Nancy, you're an exemplar of how this is being done in a I would call it a small to mid-sized finance team compared to those big giants, but they're the same kind of issues. They're just different scale and different scope. And I just have to say thank you for joining us on today's town hall. And we'll be moving on to the next piece there, Eric.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for this great session. So Tom, as we move into open forum, just I would like you to kind of maybe share some additional thinking on, and we can bring up Lisa in April and Lauren. I don't know if Lauren's joining us as well for the open forum, and we can drop the slides here. But Tom, just to start out with you, we do, as I said, we've 25% plus of the audience are in business and industry, but the members that are in public practice, one thing that I know you're doing more and more over this future of finance effort is connecting with a lot of the firm training related to the client advisory services area. So maybe just talk a little bit about that increasing overlap between the finance function and what the firms are doing. Yeah,
Eric, I mean, it's funny because we found as we were going through what the finance teams are doing, the firms out there that are doing client accounting advisory services are in fact doing outsourced CFO work. And most of them aspire to exactly what Nancy said, as I want to go from reporting to analyzing and adding value. And I think so what we're finding is a curriculum that we've built for corporate controllers moving up to CFO and beyond. We're applying that to the CAS practice and being able to offer a curriculum for firms that give that kind of way to do that. That could be a subject for another town hall, but it's pretty exciting to see the issues are the same, and we're all trying to move into higher value activities. Listen to the tax group. They were trying to get out of a lot of the mundane stuff to be doing a lot more value added things with their client base. And I think that's the opportunity for all of us as CPAs in this environment.
Well, Tom, we will be talking about that at Digital CPA, and I do think it makes sense in a future town hall just to talk about some of the connections there and some of the training that's available, because without a doubt, I mean, one of the fastest growing areas, if not the fastest growing area in the firm, is the outsourced accounting services, the virtual CFO, and the training that you're applying in the finance area is highly relevant. So we'll talk more about that. Yeah. Lisa, lots of questions came in as usual. I know, and it's great having you in the Durham studio. I have them here. And one question, just a couple came in. There's probably a number of questions on the ERC and the delays related to IRS processing the ERC payment. So is two-part question. Is there anything that the firms can do to help expedite this? And then some firms are hearing that the IRS is holding back ERC payments when the request is over $200,000 until they complete additional reviews. Anything, any knowledge that we have related to that?
We do believe that the IRS is definitely holding back some of those larger ERC refund requests. Don't know what the limit is, is it 100,000, is it 200,000? I don't know the answer to that, but yes, they are taking additional time to scrutinize some of those larger requests. As far as what can a CPA firm do to help their client, I think it's just helping the client understand the overall ecosystem around ERC, the challenges with fraud and abuse, the challenges with paper returns, which we've referred to as IRS kryptonite before, and that it's just going to take a while to get those all through the system.
Okay, thanks. Lisa, I know PCPS, it talks a lot about many of the tax issues that April just covered. Is there there's a number of questions coming in just related to that discussion. Anything that you want to share as you listen to it about the deadline and how PCPS has also thought about this over the past couple of years?
It's a great question, Eric. And when we think about the challenges with the practice management, the running of the business, a lot of the points that April, Damien, and Nicole made are perfectly relevant. It is setting boundaries. It is communicating with clients about the expectations and level setting with your teams about who they can, what their tax season is going to look like, and then how best to manage it. So who's going to do the work? What are the hours going to be? I was talking to a young CPA a couple of weeks ago who said that a problem client brought their return information in on October 17, and the managing partner said, I need you to get this return done today. So no boundaries equals, challenges for your team.
Well, April, one thing I look forward to doing in future town halls is just maybe some summaries of some of those insights that the task force is going to be putting together. Anything else that you want to comment related to those resources?
One thing I didn't mention, I forgot to mention, is we have a resource included in your materials today, and I have to give a shout out to another member of the task force. His name is Chris Whittick. He's known as Ravenous Tiger on tax Twitter. So shout out there. He had this idea to put together a list of the task force members and have them each answer, a set number of questions. He like, if you're looking at who do you vote for the soil and water conservancy, it's not a political divide. It's like, how do they feel on these issues? So that's the way he envisioned it. So we had each of so you can kind of get a grip of, hey, here's the task force members and where are they coming from on certain questions. So I think that's a pretty cool resource that's included in your materials today.
Okay, thanks. Lauren, lots of dialogue related to your update. Just I could pick a number of questions, but a couple of questions came in just on the Retirement Act and just maybe expand a little bit further on that and what your thoughts are related to the lame duck session in December.
Yeah, I'll make a bold prediction. I think the retirement bill is going to pass in the lame duck session. I think sometime in mid to late December, we're going to see action on that. It's just something that so many members want to see passed because there are about 100 provisions that overlap between the House bill and the 2 Senate bills. So when you have that many members interested in legislation, and we know that there are active negotiations, kind of pre-conferencing of a final bill happening right now, I think it's looking really good. And if it doesn't happen by the end of this year, it's going to happen next year. There's just too much interest in this bill.
Well, thank you. We'll be keeping everybody updated on that as that progresses. So thanks, Lauren. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, April. Lisa and I will close out today's town hall. So first, here's our in summary slide. Once again, we welcome you leveraging all of these materials with other members in your firm or company, as well as with your clients. So here are the most recent town halls. We've got those great archives. Take advantage of them. We're also going to try to give you more and more, bite-sized segments from our town hall. Here's just one a 10-minute segment on building your cash practice. So we'll work on building out that archive as well. So you can go just right to what you might want to watch again, or maybe if you missed it, watch it for the first time. So we're going to be coming to you live from Digital CPA, which is going to be in Austin. So it'll be Tuesday, December 6th at 4 p.m. So a different day. And Lisa, this will be 1 hour later A lot of great questions. We'll talk more about FTX with Barry Melanson. We got Ron Quantra, who leads the Wall Street Blockchain Alliance. We're going to have the chair of the AICPA, a new Meta, on with us, and also the chair of Digital CPA, Jody Gruden. So, Lisa, I'm looking forward to that session with you. And here's the last town hall that we'll be having in 2022, which will be December 15th. We really enjoyed this engagement with all of you. And Lisa, I'll let you have final comments and sign off here.
Two things. First, how in the world are we showing December dates for our next upcoming town hall episodes? That blows my mind. And second, I hope you all take some time off to enjoy the Thanksgiving holiday. If you are looking for some recipes, just look for Accountants Who Cook on Twitter. You'll get some great insights. Have a great Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thank you for your participation. You can now subscribe to the AICPA Town Hall series on your favorite podcast platform, as well as watch archives on YouTube and AICPA TV. Tune in for live broadcasts Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Time.